Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and welcome to the Insider Exclusive. Today, I am pleased to present the law firm of Murphy, Rosen, and Cohen in our Southern California Premier Law Firm series. Stay tuned.
I handle a variety of cases. Really, I guess my core emphasis is on financial-related cases. I was a CPA for several years before I went to law school. So I handle insurance coverage cases, intellectual property cases, and then any really kind of a business case where there are financial-related issues.
I think Bob and I, in this respect, think a lot alike. We look forward to going to trial, where a lot of lawyers, whether it's criminal or civil, don't know how to try the case, don't know how to put a case together. And I think when you are looking for a favorable result, whether it's suing someone over money or trying to stay out of jail for as long as possible, what you're looking for is leverage. And sometimes that leverage comes with being prepared, going to trial, being able to raise an issue in trial. So that's how I focus my case. My first thought is, what's going to happen in this case at trial? And then I try to work back from there.
And I want to welcome to our show today two of the partners of Murphy, Rosen, and Cohen. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Steve.
This is Philip Cohen and
Bob Malin.
Bob Malin. I understand you have two different practice areas, right?
Yes, that is.
Yours is criminal and yours is business litigation.
Correct.
And you're well known in the criminal area, aren't you?
That's what they tell me.
What kind of cases do you generally handle?
About 75% of my cases usually revolve around narcotics, either state and federal, both in California, LA area, and other cities around the country. And then the other 25% can fall into typically fraud cases, other types of theft cases, and then I get into murder cases and robbery cases here and there. But again, the large majority is drug cases.
Which kind of cases do you like the best?
The cases that I find the most challenging are those where there is very, very difficult to find a real clear defense. And people say to me, you know, how do you represent people who, at least on paper or maybe in actuality, are guilty? That to me is where the challenge of being a criminal defense lawyer comes in, and that to me is what makes it fun.
What you look for was procedure violated a lot of times, don't you?
Oftentimes, cases really fall into two types of areas. One becomes a procedure or a motion case.
Yes.
Is there some challenge you can raise to a stop or to a search or to a statement? And then one becomes a trial or really a factual case.
Right.
Can I make an argument and not be laughed out of court by the jury as to whether there's questions as to innocent or guilt?
Right.
And as it turns out, and people say, you know, how do you go around representing guilty people, and how do you live with yourself? How do you sleep at night? To me, the harder job is representing the innocent person, because the innocent person, the factually innocent person, you have no excuse for losing that trial. The truth should come out in the end, and you should win those cases. It's when you represent someone who's not clearly on paper innocent, or the evidence seems to be stacked against them, that really I think the skill of a lawyer starts coming in.
There's a lot of shows on TV, you know, showing lawyers, law and order, and that sort of thing. And you see a lot of things that the police do, like, for example, lying to a potential defendant, right? Do they do these kinds of things?
All the time.
And what, if you happen to be arrested, what is the very first thing you should do?
Shut up.
Shut up.
Absolutely.
They're going to ask you questions.
Yes.
You say, I have the right to remain silent, don't I? Call my lawyer.
Either don't answer or call my lawyer.
And why is that?
And that's true, and people hear that and they think, well, because you have something to hide.
Yes.
When the police arrest you, they have their mind made up at that point what they're going to do. And I tell this to clients and potential clients or people at cocktail parties all the time. They know what they're going to do. They're not arresting you because they have a hunch. They're not arresting you because they think they may end up prosecuting or filing a case later on.
Why are they arresting you?
Because they believe you've done something wrong. And whatever you tell them, if it is consistent with you being guilty, they'll believe you.
Right.
If it's inconsistent with you being guilty, they'll think you're lying. And they are not going to be swayed by what you have to say. They're not going to be deterred by what you have to say. And all you're doing is setting yourself into motion a scenario where whatever statement you give them is going to come back probably later on to be contradicted or to be used against you in some way.
Because it's written by them, isn't it?
Even if it's truthful. You know,
Yeah.
you take someone telling the same truthful story 5 times.
Yes.
You're telling the absolute truth. You tell the same story 5 times, it's going to come out a different way, a little detail here or something you forgot there. Each time it's going to come out a little differently. And in the hands of a good prosecutor, in the hands of a police interrogator, they can take those statements and start to make it look as if you are lying to them, even if you are telling the absolute truth on each story. And so that's why if you're going to give a statement, there should be one time you give that statement, and that's in trial, in front of a jury, and that's it.
There's some people that are going to be watching this show that don't know what the third strike law is, and I understand that you had one of those thrown out. What is the third strike, and what should people look at?
In California, we have what's called the third strike law, which starts to define those crimes which society has said are so violent or so serious that we need to give additional deterrent to people from doing them.
Yes.
If you have one strike, and a strike can be anything from the low end is really a residential burglary, breaking into someone's house.
These are felonies.
Is a felony.
Okay.
All the way up through murder, rape, robbery. All those crimes are considered strikes. If you have one strike and you pick up a second felony, the first strike has the effect of doubling your sentence.
Yes.
If you have 2 strikes, and they could be 10 years apart, 20 years apart, 5 years apart, whenever you pick them up. If you have 2 strikes and you pick up a felony, you now are exposed to a 25-year life sentence. Currently, this DA's current office oftentimes will not treat the third felony or not seek a 25-year life sentence on the third felony unless it's something serious or violent. But that's what you're exposed to. And I have a case right now where a kid with no prior record is charged with a residential burglary over really just something which was sort of minor, and perfect example of the police taking something minor and filing it in a different way. And I've told him in no uncertain terms, if you end up pleading guilty to any type of burglary in this case, it's going to stay with you forever. He's 23 years old, and that will never go away for purposes of the strike law in California.
Right.
So people need to be obviously very, very concerned and very, very informed about the effect not just of pleading guilty this particular case, and I'm staying out of jail in this particular case, but what effect a potential strike or a strike conviction will have on you down the road. And oftentimes DA's office will try to play a little Russian roulette with strikes, and they'll say, we'll let you plead to these 2 counts, you'll have 2 strikes, we're not going to give you a lot of time, banking on the fact that they're going to see them a year, a couple years down the road, and they'll have 25 to life hanging over their head.
So they can nail it. Are there any cases you won't take?
It's funny that you ask that, because I will typically, in voir dire, I'll talk to jurors about how everyone has certain things that really get to them and that they feel very strongly about, and where they may not be a fair juror.
Right.
And the example that I always give for me is my 2 best friends in the world have 4 paws each. And so I typically tell jurors, and it's true, I would be very loath to be able to remain fair on any type of animal abuse case.
So Michael Vicks would not be your client?
It would have been a very, very difficult case for me to handle. Not that he called me, but had he...
but while you bring that up, give out your phone number in case he wants to call you.
In case he wants to call me? I hear he has a new state case pending now, too. So.
What is your phone number? It's your firm.
And it's our phone number. It's 310-899-3300 is the phone number to our firm. And my cell phone number,
This is rare that an attorney's giving out a cell phone number.
Well, it's funny.
He actually has that on his business card.
When I was a young lawyer, knowing very, very little, the one thing I kept hearing over and over again from clients who were represented by other attorneys that I would meet, I can't get a hold of my attorney, I call him, he's never there. And oftentimes people just want to hear nothing's going on, or this is what happened, or we'll be in court tomorrow. So I decided at a very young age to use my cell phone to try to be in contact with people. It's 310-592-6878. And if I'm not in jail or in court somewhere, it is picked up.
Okay, good. What is your website, your firm's website?
Our website is mrcllp.com, which is Murphy, Rose, and Cohen, limitedliabilitypartnership.com. And there will be a whole litany of cases that I'm working on, and my partners, Paul Murphy, David Rosen, and now Bob Malin are working on. And it tries to stay up to date on current things that we have going.
Right. Now, Bob, you're with us today, and you handle a totally different area, don't you? Business litigation, complex cases. What are some of the cases that you handle?
I handle a variety of cases. Really, I guess my core emphasis is on financial related cases. I was a CPA for several years before I went to law school.
Okay.
So I handle SEC actions, I handle insurance coverage cases, intellectual property cases, and then any really kind of a business case where there are financial related issues.
And recently you had a big case against Mattel, was it?
I did. That was
I mean, Mattel's got a lot of problems these days, I see. But what was this case
This
about?
preceded all of the publicity for Mattel, but it was a case in 2003 where I represented a Hong Kong-based toy company that had been sued for trademark and trade dress and copyright infringement by Mattel involving the Hot Wheels product line. My client, Real Toy, had a full range of small toy car products with, parking garages and things like that, and Mattel sued them and really tried to put the company out of business.
A lot of times companies do that because they know that the other company might not be able to support the litigation costs, right?
And that was definitely an issue here. They definitely thought they were going to squash these guys. In fact, there had been a predecessor case that Mattel had brought against my client before I got involved, where my client entered into a stipulated judgment and paid a lot of money. And 2 years later, Mattel sued them again, and then that's when this company hired me. And really the main reason the case went to trial is my clients refused to settle, notwithstanding the fact that they faced the risk of going out of business and losing everything. They decided they were going to take the case to trial.
Typically, how long does it take to get a case in front of a judge in a case like that?
Well, you're talking about getting the case to trial. Usually takes about a year now. It can be as quick as 10 months in federal court and maybe a year to a year and a half sometimes in state court, but generally I tell clients about a year.
I understand you also were involved with a major insurance bad faith litigation case. What was that? I think it was $35 million, wasn't it?
Actually, it was about $35 million. I represented Kmart in a coverage case against National Union Insurance Company. This was about 2 years ago. And resolved satisfactorily. Kmart ultimately recovered about $25 million on the policy after the insurance company had denied coverage across the board.
Most insurance companies' policy is we want your premium now and we're not going to pay no matter what your policy says unless you sue us, right?
I also represent insurance companies, so I would say that's probably painting all insurance companies with too broad a brush.
Well, they have that kind of reputation.
They do. I had a case, another insurance coverage case a couple years ago where the judge asked the prospective jurors, has anyone had a bad experience with an insurance company?
And everybody raised their hand.
And he's quickly rephrased it, has anyone not had a bad experience with an insurance company?
Nobody raised their hand.
So, but I also represent several very well-run insurance companies that do the right thing and will pay the claim.
What are the names of those insurance companies?
Lloyd's of London.
Oh, is that right? Okay, good. I also understand you were involved with rather a well-known defamation case. What was all that about?
That was a great case. That's going back about 10 years ago. We represented two former federal prosecutors who had it occurred after one of the fellows went into private practice, but the other guy was still with the organized strike force, which was it prosecuted organized crime figures. And he had a former witness who thought he had a deal but was sentenced to many years in prison, and he decided that he was going to try to libel these two prosecutors. And he actually got a full investigation opened up by the Main Justice in Washington, D.C., and they brought in some special investigators. And the long and short of it is this one reporter for the Arizona Republic decided that he was going to make a much bigger story out of the investigation than was warranted, even though these two individuals were completely innocent and were ultimately cleared of all wrongdoing. This reporter from the Arizona Republic ran a story that made it look like they were lying to cover up the story. We took the case over just weeks before trial, after it had come back from the Ninth Circuit on a technical issue, and tried it and won about $1.2 million in damages, which was subsequently affirmed by the Ninth Circuit.
Well, it seems like you handle a lot of different kind of business cases, and you handle criminal cases. What other type of practice areas does your firm represent?
We handle really any type of litigation that comes up. And when I say litigation, it could be criminal litigation, it could be civil litigation. Bob and I actually right now have a crossover case with a fraud claim against a trust out of Ohio, where he's representing the trust with respect to certain civil issues, and I'm representing the trust with respect to the criminal investigation. But if it's litigation, whether it takes place in the business context, we handle some employment cases that are litigation. We don't do any type of transactional, meaning we don't do any type of contractual negotiation.
Mainly courtroom stuff.
Yeah, it's the filing of a case. For me, as I see my job, and I think Bob and I in this respect think a lot alike, we look forward to going to trial, where a lot of lawyers, whether it's criminal or civil, don't know how to try a case, don't know how to put a case together. And I think when you are looking for a favorable result, whether it's suing someone over money or trying to stay out of jail for as long as possible, what you're looking for is leverage. And sometimes that leverage comes with being prepared, going to trial, being able to raise an issue at trial. So that's how I focus my case. My first thought is, what's going to happen with this case at trial?
Right.
And then I try to work back from there.
Yeah, one of the reasons we have these shows to begin with is to let the public know, there are very good attorneys out there. You were a super lawyer recently, is that correct?
Yes.
And let people know that there are good choices out there, that people that care, particularly people who hand out their cell phone number. And I've called you before and you've answered every single time.
Unless I knew it was you calling.
Yeah, then you didn't answer. Now there is some sort of stipulation on that. Anyway, I want to thank you both for being on the show. Thank you, Bob.
It's nice meeting you, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil.
Always good to see you.
And would you kindly give out your website one more time, please?
Sure. It is mrcllp.com.
All right. And telephone numbers?
310-899-3300.
Very good. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you for watching our show. We've enjoyed having you. You can get more information on our shows at insiderexclusive.com. Thank you.